but with different words. It's honestly awful. Hi, everybody. Welcome, Irina. Thank you so much for joining me today here in Salisbury. For those of you who don't know me, a very quick introduction. My name is Dr. Lilian Céspedes González. I'm a historian with a PhD in history from the University of Winchester. And I'm a tour guide here in the south of England. And today we're in the lovely market town of Salisbury, which is by large a medieval market town. I'm very, very lucky because I studied Salisbury when I was doing my master's with Professor Michael Hicks, who is a great local historian and renowned in the UK for his research on the reign of Richard III and the later Middle Ages. So I've actually worked on Salisbury on the ground quite a fair bit, particularly because of the cathedral. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to share this with you guys today. Welcome, Lorna and Grace, and thank you so much for joining us, Sandy from Minnesota. I hope you're doing really, really good. So what we're going to be doing today is the following. We're going to start here in the market square. We're going to go around through some of the back streets just so you can see the grid sort of planning for the area, and then we will start walking through the back streets all the way up to the cathedral, which is one of the most beautiful cathedrals that we have in the UK. Not just my opinion, but for actual architectural reasons. And we will finish the tour actually in the cathedral grounds. So that's the plan. If I don't get my route wrong, because sometimes I get thrown off by a little sideway that I take, we will also be going inside St. Thomas's Church, which actually contains one of the most beautiful and complete paintings from the 15th century here from England. So we're going to be really lucky today. I don't think they will be just practicing just yet for the organ for Evensong later on. But if they are, I'm sure we can take at least a sneak peek. So that's the idea for today. Right. Hi, honey. Hi, Michael. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. Right. Let me grab the microphone so I'm not stepping on it. And let's get started here in Salisbury. Welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us. And here we go. Camera flipping round. Let me straighten up the gimbal. And let's get started. So, hello and welcome everybody to the lovely market town of Salisbury. We're here in the main square, just coming off Ox Row, and we will be talking about the names of the streets here in Salisbury in just a moment, a bit more in depth. And the reason why I like starting here is because it really helps highlighting the reason why Salisbury is such an important town here in the south of England. Salisbury was barely touched or affected by the war. Well, the impact that the war had on it was very different. So we have a lot of historical buildings that are still, period appropriate. And a lot of the establishments that you see here are actually, restaurants, hotels, and that kind of stuff. But back in the day, all of these different places that you see here would have been inns, because this is where the market square holds the market. The charter for the market of Salisbury actually goes all the way back to the 13th century, giving Salisbury the right to hold a market every single Thursday and every Sunday. Today, unfortunately, the market is already come and gone, so we don't get to see that. But every single building that you guys see here are all historical. Hi, Christy. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, Tish, Zahara, and Linda. Thank you for being here in Salisbury. So, in case you're wondering how old are some of these buildings, let me give you a few details. So Ox Row Inn, this one that you see right in front of us, which is actually currently 3 buildings altogether. One of them, the oldest, is actually from the 16th century. You see here part of the Tudor frame. It's been heavily restored, of course, but the actual foundations and everything else is actually from the 16th century. Over here, right to the left, we have Market Inn. Again, all of these have the name Inn because as much as in this day and age there are restaurants, what you need to think is that all of those windows on the upper layer, all the way until the 19th century, would have been, rooms for renting for any of the people that came for the market, both to do business and both to buy things. So Market Inn is actually from the 18th century. It follows a more classical Georgian style. For those of you not familiar with the nomenclatures here in the UK, Georgian style in the UK is normally what we consider neoclassical style in the rest of Europe and in the United States. But it's got specific features that are very British, particularly bay windows and things like that. And the reason why it's called Georgian style is because during that period, we had several kings named George, one after the other. So that's the reason for it. And yes, they were coaching inns indeed, John. Thank you so much for joining, Gerald and KG. Hope you're doing really good. And thank you for being here today in Salisbury with us. Well, I could go on and on and on about pretty much every single building here, but that is the drill. That's the reason why the market square is one of the most important places here. Now, we're gonna start walking through the back streets of Salisbury so you can see the grid system that this town was built upon, and you can see some other historical buildings. Because although these ones are old, actually the majority of Salisbury in the commercial district goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. The majority of the buildings that we're gonna see in the back streets actually date all the way back to the 14th century, which is, you know, pretty impressive. Hey Jill, hi Kaylee, Barbara, and Drawing Tours. Welcome Becky. Thank you so much for joining us. And before I do that though, I would like to show you this little sort of crossroads to commemorate the connections that we have with Salisbury in Maryland, the United States, and Salisbury with North Carolina, as we were mentioning just a moment ago. And the reason why we have this one specifically selected here instead of many other Salisburys that are not just in the United States but across the world is because we do actually have settlers directly from Salisbury into Salisbury, Maryland, and Salisbury, North Carolina. So if any of you guys from the other side of the Atlantic actually have connections to either of those towns or those areas, it's very likely that some of your ancestors would have come from the area of Wiltshire, which is the county that Salisbury is the capital for. So now that we have established the connections across the globe, let me show you very quickly the City Hall, which is a very good example of 18th century Georgian architecture. So let me show you this, and then we will go through the back to see the rows of Salisbury. So here we go. This was actually erected originally to be the mayor's office in 1704, but right now it's just used as the City Hall. I mean, I say just, as if it's not enough use. Welcome, Lance and Jack. Thank you so much for joining us. They also use it as a space for galleries and, you know, little events like that every so often. And the market normally takes place right here in this square. I'm just going to do a 360 just all the way around so you can see how big this space is and why this is so important. Welcome, Kirsten, Carolee, and Sue, and thank you so much, Hillary, for the tip. Okay, so here comes the 360. So 1, 2, 3, here we go. So you're gonna see here on the corner a few buildings that look rather old. The ones approaching here just with the frames, they are not Tudor, those are actually reconstructions from the 19th century. But the one there on the corner, the Frog, is actually a 14th century building. I'm sure you can see that the difference in the frame is quite severe. Hey Tracy, hi Katie, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. And if I carry on moving, you will see that this square was obviously the perfect place where to set up the market. That's the reason why everything else in the city sort of goes from here on. So what we're going to be doing now is taking the back row and start walking towards the cathedral. And I'm sure you can see right behind these trees, there is a tower clock there. Well, that's the Tower of St. Thomas, where we're going to end up doing this tour as well. So keep that in mind as we walk through. Welcome, Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining us. Izzy and Ashley, I think I already said hello, but in case I didn't, hello again, and happy Sunday, Ellen. Hope you're all doing really good. Right, well, while I'm walking, and I'm pointing at some buildings, let me tell you a bit more about the history of Salisbury. Welcome, Eileen, Ross, and Jeff. Thank you so much for being here, Anna. And hey, Lance, I hope you're doing really good. Well, Salisbury was actually known by a different name for a really long time. This town has only been called Salisbury since 2009, guys. So, you know, literally, 14 years? And not a very long time. So you're probably wondering what it was actually known beforehand. This, by the way, is one of the restored historical buildings here in Salisbury, a beautiful Tudor frame, but the restoration is from 1930, so not a lot of the features are original. However, the building has been there since the late 1400s, early 1500s, by the way. Welcome, Phil, Sue, Eva, and Dennis. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, before being called Salisbury, this whole area was actually known as New Sarum. And New Sarum was the settlement that was built after Old Sarum, where the original inhabitants of this area used to reside. Old Sarum was an Iron Age hill fort, which then was taken over by the Romans and then eventually by William the Conqueror. And after a while in the Middle Ages, they decided it was no longer useful and settled here in the plain. Old Sarum was actually on the top of the hill. Now, before I carry on with this tale, hi, Noreen, thank you so much for joining. I really wanted to show you this, by the way, because Salisbury was actually the 14th post on horse change to pass over the news regarding the victory of Trafalgar. This is really, really important in how news were actually carried from one place to another in the country. During the Napoleonic Wars, this was crucial, and the post here in Salisbury was absolutely crucial for the development of the war in that sense. So that's the little map that you have in there. As you can see, it went all the way from the port of Falmouth, crossing over through the south of England, all the way to London eventually. Welcome, Nelly. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you're doing good. So, that little side note aside, like I said, Old Sarum used to be at the top of the hill, and then at the end of the Middle Ages, they needed to expand, so they created New Sarum here. And the reason why the name gets changed in 2009, well, it's a little bit controversial. Apparently, there was a vote here with the citizens. Why did they pick Salisbury, or what does Salisbury mean? We're not entirely sure. We think it's a deformation of the very title, Sarum, from Old and New Sarum, but the name is much contested, so on that front, unfortunately, I won't be able to clarify it. Hi, Lou, Joanne, Mag, and Sharon. Hope you're doing good. Yes, well, that's kind of how it went. The death of Admiral Nelson, is that in regards to the map lands? Trafalgar was just the victory over the French and the Spanish, which was one of the most important moments in the Peninsular War. Well, the reason why I'm pointing at this building is because it really reflects the sort of things you can find in Salisbury. This was a Victorian butcher's. As you can see, they still have the signs for home killed only, Pritchett family butcher. And this, what's it called? I've completely forgotten what's the name of this. It's not a fence. What is the word I'm looking for, guys? Anyway, this thing that you put, when you're looking up the doors of a store at night, this is all actually still wood, by the way. Let me just... It's not actually metal or made it look like metal. It's still the original. There you go. Shutter. That was the word I'm looking for. Thank you so much. It just completely left my mind. That's still an original 19th century shutter, which is actually very rare to find in most towns in this day and age. Welcome, Carrington, Antonio Rodolfo, and Jennifer. Thank you so much. Pamela. Oh, this is the guide Pamela from Banff. Thank you so much for joining us here. So that's the type of treasures that you can find in this town of Salisbury. Well, we are currently walking Fish Row. We've also come through Ox Row. So as you realize, it's not like the names of the rows are very imaginative. Before I carry on Ox Row, I would like to show you as well a little bit of street art that is starting to pop up all over the south of England. This is a hen dog. For those of you who have traveled through Southampton and Winchester with me, you've seen a few of these. He's a local artist and is trying to build a reputation here in the south. So you will probably start seeing more of this everywhere in the UK very, very soon. It's not quite, Banksy level just yet, but it's definitely skyrocketing to that level in a very short period of time. Hey, Tristan, Jim, and how are you doing? Thank you so much for being here. And hi, John. Thank you so much for being there. Yes, I think it's rather lovely. Well, as you can see, just so you can see that I'm not messing about with the names of the rows, Butcher Row, Fish Row, these are pretty straightforward names. Well, there is a very good reason for this, which I'll tell you as we're walking through the rest of Butcher Row. Well, in the 13th century, when the market town of Salisbury is created, following a charter of Henry III issued in 1227, they created the market in a grid, and they created a system called the checker. The checker, which is also the place where we get the word exchequer, was this huge sort of like book where people recorded their business and what they were doing in town and where they were located. It was kind of like the early version of a directory of a phone book that we've used. Well, not so much in this day and age, but you guys know what I mean. I'm sure everyone probably remembers phone books here. That was a way for the market town to know exactly what kind of assets it had throughout the Middle Ages, which businesses had to pay taxes for what type of guild, which of course was super important because guilds in medieval market towns were essentially the people running the town alongside with the mayor. And as such, all of the rows here were named after the primary business that specific Row was conducting. So in Butcher's Row, we would have had, of course, the butchers. And in Fish Row, we would have had the fish market. Now, as you can see, obviously things have changed a lot in Salisbury since the Middle Ages. And although the buildings still remain, this one, for example, here in Goldsmiths, is a beautiful Tudor frame. It's been quite severely renovated, I will not lie, throughout the 19th and the 20th century. But as you can see, the structure of the business is still the same, just the nature of the business is what has changed. Welcome, Patricia. Hope you're having a good day. Well, normally I would be able to show you the lovely poultry cross, which is currently covered in scaffolding. And that broke my heart when I came here this morning and I was like, no, why is it all gone? Well, here, through the scaffolding, you can probably just about make a structure that looks Gothic. The poultry cross has been here since the 14th century. The buttresses have actually been incorporated in the 19th century. And the reason why it's called the poultry cross is because this would have been the area that would specifically mark the beginning of the market for poultry, for, chickens and the rest. The rest of Salisbury would have had crosses like this all over, up to 14, the checkers and the books of the area show. But unfortunately, most of them were actually taken down in the 19th century for redevelopment of town. Regardless, and as you can see, a lot of historical buildings still keep the tradition of the town alive. This one is one of the best jewelers in the whole of Salisbury. This is actually a goldsmith and silversmith, Carter and Son. And back in the 19th century, I'm sure you can see it as well on the actual sign, they were also opticians. Because if you think about it, the degree of mastery that it requires to work with jewelry and things like that, it was very, very close to glasswork as well. So to create glasses, a lot of jewelers were also your opticians. I know that sounds probably crazy to us in this day and age, but there we go. And this is, of course, the Stonehenge bus, because Stonehenge is literally 8 miles away from Salisbury. This one is one of the oldest pubs in Salisbury, the Hunch Venison, and it's allegedly one of the most haunted buildings in the whole town because it's had so many people staying here over 700 years. So that's for how long it's actually been a pub or an inn, 700 years. Allegedly, I guess, the more people you have coming through your door, the more chances to have a couple of unwanted ghosts. So I'm just going to cross the road now that it's gotten a bit quieter so we can carry on moving. Well, she says that, and of course, immediately there had to be a car and a van. Okay, after the white car, I swear I'll cross. Excellent, here we go. Brilliant. Welcome everyone that just joined the stream. Hi, Max, Barbara, Carol, Ellen, Kim, Sue, and Vicky. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you're having a really, really good day. Excellent. Well, now that you understand a bit more as to why Salisbury was created in this way and when it was created, let me show you a few other of its features. Welcome, Shannon. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to be walking now towards two of the other sites in the city. The bridge with the river, which was literally the outskirts of the town in the Middle Ages, and St. Thomas's Church. I have St. Thomas's Church from the side here. I'm going to show you this view for one moment, and then we'll go to see the actual church in full from the front. So this is the lovely Church of St. Thomas. St. Thomas is in honor of St. Thomas Becket, who was actually one of the most popular saints here in England throughout the Middle Ages. You know, he was the priest that actually gets brutally murdered in Canterbury following the orders of the king, because this death and murder was so terrible and very, very badly seen upon. The king actually repented almost straight after it happened, and as such, Thomas Becket gets canonized and made into a very important British saint. And as a result, we have actually a lot of daffodils in here, and I think it's quite special because I don't know if you guys know, but today is Mother's Day in the UK. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there. And it's very traditional to actually gift daffodils for Mother's Day, at least here. I don't know if that's the same in other countries, but I think it's just so lovely that we have so many in the garden today. So I'll give you a moment to see all of the daffodils. I know, because we have the more yellow ones and the ones that are a little bit paler. So they are very, very cool. Yes, Henry II. Did I say Henry III? I'm sorry, because I have Henry III with the charter earlier, so I'm sure I missed a number here and there. Will no rid me of the turbulent priest? Yes, that's the famous quote. And why was he a turbulent priest? Well, actually, no one else really saw him as a turbulent priest other than the king. The problem is Thomas Becket was actually quite vocal about a lot of the political issues that were going on in England at the time, which, bishops at the time would have been, and carried on being for a really long time. But as a result, well, that put him, in the bad books of a lot of people. Hi, Aziz. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, Deborah. Hope you're doing good. And hi, Mike. Hope you're doing really good. In the US, is it Carnation in May? I didn't realize. Well, for me today is actually Father's Day. So in Spain, the 19th of March, every single year we celebrate Father's Day, supposedly in honor of Joseph, father of Jesus. The day 19th is supposed to be associated with him somehow, and that's the reason why we do it that way. So happy Mother's Day in honor of all of the mothers on tour here today, and happy Father's Day for those of you who, like me, have an amazing father, and I love him very much. So if anyone else on tour feels the same way, it is also a happy Father's Day for you guys. Oh, thank you, Barbara. You're very kind. Well, yeah, it's similar in Spain. We have Mother's Day the first Sunday of May, because it's Mothering Sunday, so following Catholic Church tradition. So there we go. Yes, there we go. Hey, Faye, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're doing good. Right. So let me just give you a quick view of the front entrance of St. Thomas's, and then in the meantime, I'll check that the church is actually open, which I believe it is, and we can go and see the Doomsday representation on this church. For those of you that like art history, you're about to see the most beautiful, complete, and oldest fresco that exists in an English church in the whole of England. It's from the late 15th century and it's absolutely astonishing. Welcome, Mary. Thank you so much for joining us. And I don't know if the map is working, Patricia. I've had several problems with the map app since we got the upgrade. Right. I'm just gonna say this now, guys. Welcome, Evie. I cannot really talk in front of the church. They are actually preparing. I can see they're preparing for evensong, so I'm just gonna have to be very quiet from the moment we go inside. Okay. So for the next few seconds, I'm not really gonna be talking, which is why I've told you what we're gonna see just outside. Then we'll come back out and I will explain things again. If anyone else comes on to tour while I'm inside the church, please let them know that I have to be quiet while we're here. Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I can't talk right now. We will in a moment. Okay. Okay, we're gonna have to move on now. Right. Okay, I'm leaving now so I can actually start talking. I don't know if you could hear, they were actually training with the bells at the back. I hope you guys enjoy that. I think St. Thomas is a wonderful, wonderful gift. Hi, everybody that just joined, by the way. Hi, Sarah, Kathy, and Sam. Sorry we couldn't talk inside of the church. They were practicing. So for those of you who were looking, the architecture inside of St. Thomas's church is all Gothic. The ceilings that you guys saw is actually Georgian woodwork. So it's actually from the 17th century. And the painting that you saw there, that is actually the depiction of Doomsday, which is, like I said, one of the oldest and most complete frescoes that we have in the whole of the UK, dating from the 15th century. So it's an absolute treasure of British art that not a lot of people get to see. So I hope you enjoy that. And we're just gonna have a very quick look here over the river, and then we're gonna be walking towards the cathedral, because I'm aware that I have about 15 minutes left in this stream. So thank you so much for being here, guys. Hello, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Salisbury has also been a place for scandals up until quite recently. In fact, not far away from here, and in relation to the place that I'm about to show you, there was in 2018 here in the Bishop's Mill an attack. This is the famous poisoning of the Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter. They were actually eating here at the Bishop's Mill. And then they went over to Zizi's, I believe it was, which is a sort of Italian restaurant here in the UK. It's a chain. And they were actually poisoned, which was a very, very important international affair. It kind of took over the news, and it was really quite scary. Unfortunately, the people that, well, the person that actually poisoned them also managed to contaminate several other people in the restaurant where the father and daughter were actually eating, and well, things didn't really go very well. So Salisbury was in the news for quite a long time because of that. And as such, this international affair really changed a lot of British politics. As we know nowadays, the Boris Johnson administration has been, well, known to be involved in a few issues with Russian mobsters, and well, perhaps that is still something residual of the country. And yes, indeed, that is Putin for you. Thank you so much, Ashley. You're very kind, and welcome, Monique. Hope you're doing good. But as you can see, the Bishop's Mill is a lovely area where to come and just have literally a snack or a drink. It gives you some lovely, lovely views of the actual river. And for the record, right here where the spire is, not the church spire, but this one here, the clock tower, that was the end of Salisbury in the Middle Ages. As you can see, it was a relatively small market town. You would already be on the outskirts from that place on. Even nowadays, Salisbury is actually not that big, guys. We're about 40,000 inhabitants, and that considers, not just the city center, but surrounding areas. They did catch him, and they did convict the prisoner, but it was all actually very controversial, Jim. Things just ended up going really, really, really weird. So they caught him. There was a trial, and then kind of things fizzled out from that moment on. And that's what actually caused a lot of issues, because, well, there were plenty of evidence. They were supposed to have the culprit and everything else, but, well, and things went all a bit awry. Well, John, as far as I'm concerned, because then the trial has been having a back and forth for quite some time. So the result now may be different than what it was back at the time. But as far as I'm concerned, they sort of managed to sort things out, but in a way that wasn't exactly the desired outcome. So that's why it was so controversial. This is the back of the tower where we've come from, by the way, and now we're going to turn around here to start walking towards the cathedral. They escaped? Oh, I didn't realize they had actually escaped. Well, there you go. So, yeah. Well, let me get out of the main road where the traffic is coming, guys. Give me 1 sec, because I know that bus has probably affected the signal a little bit, so I'm just moving out. And by the way, the spire that you see there in the back is the cathedral now. So we are pretty much in the cathedral grounds. And this is one of the many different commercial areas of Salisbury, because as a market town from the Middle Ages, it has evolved into this. Salisbury is essentially the place where you want to come and do shopping, particularly over Christmas. Because, well, you have lovely surroundings, And there is about 10 different malls in this whole area, plus the shops that you see happily all over the town. So it is really considered one of the best places where to do your shopping in the UK. They have a lot of different businesses, and many of them are also locally owned. So not just, your typical chains that you can see anywhere else in the UK. So that's also the reason why Salisbury is a very, very popular place in this day and age. Well, let us get now through the archway and into the cathedral. And then, oh, excellent. I'm just going to cross the road now. 1 second. Excellent. So, thank you so much, Mary. You're very kind. So, Salisbury Cathedral is really a national treasure here in the UK for various reasons. Oh, by the way, we're about to pass my favorite shop in the whole town, which this is a very strange interjection, but please bear with me, because if there's one thing you must buy when you come to Salisbury, is fudge, homemade fudge here in Rolly's Fudge Paintery. They've won so many awards. You can see it there, all of the awards and all of the love. And what I love is this. They've made a Stonehenge out of fudge. I love fudge. The fudge from here is amazing. They do gluten-free fudge. They do lactose-free fudge, etc., etc. So they are honestly a very, very good place, as you can see, where to get all of that delicious fudge. I am very hungry right now, so we're going to have to move on. But if you come over to Salisbury, make sure you buy some handmade fudge because it's amazing. Thank you so much, Sandy. It's very kind of you. And welcome, Flo. Hope you're doing good. Right, well, we've officially passed the gate for Salisbury Cathedral. So everything that you actually see from this point on is actually, or has been at one point, owned by the cathedral. And it was the early areas that were actually settled in Salisbury as New Sarum. Because when Henry III gives us the charter to actually form the town, it happens around the cathedral first. So the rights for the cathedral were given in the first instance, and then the market town comes from the cathedral itself. As you can see, a lot of the buildings around here are historical properties. Some of these are actually museums, but they are not currently open. Everything closes here quite early on a Sunday, and many of them are small collections that only actually open in the summer. But as you can see, this is a lovely area and very typical formation for what we find here in monastic, or what used to be cathedral towns in the UK. So what we are seeing here in the horizon now is the lovely Salisbury Cathedral, which is from the 13th century. The foundations for it started in the 1220s, but the later works in the cathedral were not completed until the end of the 14th century. In fact, the body of the cathedral itself is 13th century architecture, but the spire itself is actually a century later. It's from the 14th century, which is the reason why you will notice that the degree of detail is a little bit different. I'm going to get a little closer so you can appreciate how the Gothic developed here and why the spire is so different. Now, as a result, we have consensus amongst, architects and historians here in the UK that Salisbury Cathedral is perhaps one of the finest examples of early English architecture, because as you can see, well, it's absolutely gorgeous. There is no denying that. However, in terms of ornamentation, it's quite bare. It's not like what you probably expect from other Gothic cathedrals that I'm sure you've seen, including with myself places like Winchester Cathedral. And that's because early Gothic is actually quite plain overall. It's very much about the architectural features, not about the ornamentation. However, 100 years later, moving forward, we have the spire, which, by the way, is the tallest spire in the UK, 123 meters. I'm going to go into vertical mode for this, guys. So please let me just stabilize the gimbal to go vertical. And I'm going to count to 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, vertical. So as a result, you can see that there is a lot more ornamentation in the spire here. Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you so much, Grace and Diane. It's very, very kind of you. Excellent. Well, I'm just gonna go back into a horizontal now. 1, 2, 3, horizontal. Great. Well, there we go. Now, I don't know if you know, if you've been with me to Winchester, you would know this. We have a bit of a silly competition in the south of England between Salisbury and Winchester as to who has the most beautiful Gothic cathedral. Well, this one was all built during Gothic times, so in my opinion, Salisbury should win just for actual credibility. But in terms of ornamentation, I think we can agree Winchester has a bit more. In fact, as a result, in the 19th century, Salisbury Cathedral got renovated, particularly in the front screen, which is what I'm about to show you just now. I'm just waiting for this wind to ease a moment because it's quite fierce against the gimbal. The front screen of the cathedral was all redone. There is only about 7 statues that are actually original. So I'm going to show you that just now, and that is where the tour will end. Welcome, Helen. Hope you're doing good. Nice to see you here. Okay, let me get there. Now we're gonna have to take several steps back to be able to get the whole front of the cathedral in here. But in the meantime, let me give you a few more details about the cathedral. Salisbury Cathedral actually holds the best preserved copies of the Magna Carta, you know, the document from 1215 signed by King John to ratify the rights of the, I'll say it, of the barons following a rather nasty confrontation that we had here in England. Welcome, Alpha. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's also the home to one of the oldest clocks in the whole world. You can't see it because it's not a clock that actually has a face. It's just the mechanism of the clock. But the clock from Salisbury Cathedral is actually from the 14th century and still in use. So, as you can see, very impressive. Well, all of this insane decor that you guys see here, like I said, was all redone in the 19th century. I think there is a total of 84 statues in here, if I remember my maths correctly. And like I said, only 7 of them are actually original from the Middle Ages. So what happened was that as the 19th century was really bringing a lot of new life into a lot of these towns throughout the south of England, they decided that, well, this whole facade pretty much bare didn't really add a lot of majesty. So in the spirit of Victorian neo-Gothic, they decided to add to this. Were the windows destroyed and boarded now? No, they are actually original. These ones here, they are not boarded. What you see is actually a technique in decoration that is actually laminated. That's the reason why they look like they're boarded up, but they are not boarded up itself. There is actually quite a lot of natural light that comes through there. However, they have little railings of iron, and that makes them look a little bit funny in that respect. But I see why the effect from here probably looks like that, Jim. But Salisbury Cathedral is actually one of the best illuminated churches in the whole of the south of England and England in general. Once you go inside, there is not a single dark corner. But of course, unfortunately, that's not something we're going to be able to do. Right, well, I hope that you've enjoyed this view. I'm going to get you a little closer to see the entrance with the Madonna enthroned into what would have been the original front door of the church. Currently, they use the interior door from the cloister, and after that we will be saying goodbye. So let me get you a few more details and then we'll move on. And maybe from here, I don't know if you can see, following Jim's question, that laminated work on the windows a bit more, but as you can see, it's not actually boarded up. It's proper glass and just metal. Thank you so much, Donna and Tracy. It's very kind of you. So as you can see, this is a bit more like the majesty that one expects of a Gothic cathedral, but, you know, not something that the original church had going for it. As it's one of the earliest ones in Gothic in the UK, it descends mostly from the architectural features that they had developed in Wales, a bit further down into the West Country in Somerset, and it was a bit bare. So for the 19th century majesty of what the UK was sort of expecting, it needed a bit more of shebang. And as a result, that's how we end up with the lovely front screen. But that is, like I said, all smoke and mirrors. Okay, well, I'm just gonna turn the camera now to say goodbye. I'm very sorry, Mark. You've literally just arrived towards the end of the tour. Apologies for that. But that's all from Salisbury here. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's different from what we did it last time because we've had more daylight instead of sunset. I know that the postcards come out different that way. But anyway, that's all for now, guys. I'm gonna go and get some more water since I think I really need that. And I will hopefully see you perhaps tomorrow. I have a talk on Leonardo da Vinci and then my second lecture on the Viking series at 2 p.m. and at 8 p.m. GMT. And if not, well, no worries, there's more times. So take care, have a lovely day, and see you very soon. Happy Sunday, everyone. And like I said, happy Mother's Day and Father's Day if you're celebrating. Mwah! Bye-bye, love you lots.